In our study, we performed logistic regression and classification tree analysis to develop two models that can predict whether a customer will churn or not using only customer usage data. The term churn refers to a customer unsubscribing to a service. Knowing what makes a customer churn is very important for telecom companies, as such information enables them to improve important services and products that can enable them to retain more customers. Published literature on this topic usually has large data sets available for predicting churn. Although these models have high predictive power, in the real world, small companies usually have very limited customer information available and mostly have customer usage data. Hence, we're interested in predicting customers' probability of churning based on their usage history only. Here is an outline of our presentation. We are first going to talk about our hypothesis, followed by our methods and results, and finally we'll discuss our results. Hypothesis. Since in today's globalized world, demand for international communication is very high and there are many cost-effective alternatives to telecom services like Skype and Viber, customers' demand for international communication and the quality of international plans should significantly affect their decision to remain with a particular telecom company. Therefore, we hypothesize that whether a client subscribes to an international plan plays a key role in determining if a customer churns, and there might also be other possible interaction effects between the subscription and his or her international communication history. Now, Ying and Trang will talk about methods and results.
First, I will walk you through the data and how we clean the data. So we use a public data set provided by the Crowd Analytics competition in 2012. In this data set, we have 22 variables about phone usage pattern of 5,000 customers, including dummy variables regarding different phone plans, minutes and charge or cost variables, and one response variable, which is to churn or not. Since we want to avoid overfitting the data, so we decided to divide the data set into two data sets. Trained with 66% of the full data and test data set. As minute and charge variables are perfectly correlated, we took charge variables out of consideration. After we clean the data, we applied two methods, logistic regression and classification tree on this data set. Next, I will talk about the logistic regression. There are a few strongly supported theories on churn prediction, so we use stepwise variable selection technique along with a drop-in deviance test to screen on possible variables for association with the outcome at a significant level of 0.5. Since we are particularly interested in the international plan variable, we left it out of the stepwise procedure. After getting the list of all significant variables, we came up with the first model, which includes 8 variables: total day minutes, total evening minutes, total night minutes, total international minutes, total number of international calls, customer calls, voicemail plan, voicemail messages, day minutes versus night minutes, and day minutes versus evening minutes. And in the second model, we add 2 more international plan related variables, which is the dummy variable international plan and the interaction between the international plan and total international minutes. And dropping in deviance test between the two models yield very high test statistic and a significant p-value. Therefore, we can reject the null hypothesis and conclude that either international plan or the interaction term between international plan and total international minutes is an important variable in predicting the probability of churning. Since it's quite difficult to visualize all variables in logistic regression model in a graph, we decided to come up with a figure 1 to incorporate as many variables as possible. So the figure to your right indicates that customers who subscribe to international plan are more likely to stop the service no matter whether they use voicemail plan or not, and especially when they use more international minutes. Now Ying will walk you through the next method, which is classification.
So classification tree is a technique that uses binary recursive partitioning to build a decision tree that illustrates how explanatory variable influences the outcome of all response variables. So here the classification tree identified 6 significant variables: total day minutes, number of customer service calls, having international plan or not, total international calls, total international minutes and having voicemail plan or not. Therefore, international plan is identified as significant by the classification tree as well. So in our graph, if you see the boxes that says false and true, false meaning that the model predicts that the customers are not likely to churn, and true means that the model thinks that the customers are really likely to churn. So here I will walk you through an example, which is pay attention to the red circle. So when we look at the criteria, if it meets the criteria, which is if the day minutes is less than 264, we go to the left of the tree. And if it does not meet the criteria, we go to the right side of the tree. So here, when total minutes in the day is less than 264, we go to the left of the tree and look at the number of customer service calls. And then if the number of customer service calls is less than 3.5, we go to the left again and we see if it has international plan or not. And if it does not have international plan, we go to that red box. And then the false indicates that the model predicts that it's not likely to churn. And then the number 0.05 indicates the probability of churning for this specific group in the leaf. And then 78% means the percentage of observations in this leaf.
Okay, now we are going to discuss 4 big questions. We will talk about the effect of the international plan as it's relevant to our hypothesis. Then we'll touch some limitations of our study, followed by a discussion of the two methods and our recommendation. Both methods consistently show that whether a customer subscribes to an international plan is very important in predicting the probability of a customer's churning. More interestingly, both models show, as shown by these figures, that customers with international plan are even more likely to churn when their total international minutes increase. These findings suggest that this telecommunication services international plan did not work well for people with high demand for international calls. However, the classification tree indicates that having an international plan might not be the most crucial factor in churn prediction. For example, as we can see from the figure, if a customer uses more than 264 day minutes in total and does not use the voicemail plan, he or she will likely churn no matter whether he or she subscribes to international plan. Finally, with regards to limitations, it's important to keep in mind that the model is based on only one company's data, so this conclusion cannot be generalized to the entire telecommunication industry. However, this should not be too concerning because it's better to build separate predictive models for each company separately anyway, since they might have different customer segments. Another limitation is that we can only conclude that the international plan is an important variable among usage pattern variables. It's possible that this variable is relatively not important when we include other types of variables like customer demographics.
Okay, so the concordance rate, the higher the concordance rate, the stronger the predicting power of the explanatory variable is. Moreover, since the concordance rate in the test data set did not drop, we can say that the model is considerably accurate and we did not overfit the data. So now since both models have similar accuracy and overfitting, so we look at these two data sets. Logistic regression allows us to test our hypothesis on a specific variable and see how significant that variable is, while classification tree gives a bigger picture of all the variables that may be significant to our question and may identify some other important variables that are not in our hypothesis. Therefore, we conclude that both techniques have their own pros and cons and should be used in different situations.
Mm-hmm. Last but also our most important question is what should the company do out of our analysis? So our analysis implies that the quality of the international plan will affect a telecom company churn rate. So first, we recommend that this telecom company should evaluate its own international plan and divert some resources towards improving the international plans. Second, in order to better understand the behavior of clients calling internationally, companies should collect more behavioral and usage data that can help them make appropriate changes to the international plan for increasing client retention rates. For example, they can open some focus group and ask more specific questions towards international plan. Besides, as the classification tree tells a slightly different story, researchers should investigate the variables identified by the analysis in greater depth. So that's the end of our presentation. Here is a reference page, and please refer to our paper for a detailed reference and contact us if you have questions regarding the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening,
Thank you.
and we would like to acknowledge the support of Professor Kaifer from Vienna College in guiding our project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So I guess just a reminder to everyone listening that if you do have questions, you can type them into the chat box, and then I'm happy to read them to the presenter so they can answer. I guess just to get the ball rolling, one thing I was wondering is so when you say you had a variable that was to churn or not, did the data specify what time frame they were talking about?
That is a great question. So unfortunately, in the data set, it does not have a time frame variable that indicate when the customer is churning. However, when we read the description of the data set, I do remember that this data set is at least after 6 months that the customer subscribed to the service. So the only information regarding the time frame we know is that the churn decision is made after 6 months the customer start using the service.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Thank you.